Let's go now to John Kavulich, who is our senior editor for outcome modelling analysis at Issue Insight, joining us live from London. First off, John, are you surprised with Trump's remarks? The announcement of the 100% tariffs, which, as we just heard there, was somewhat of a surprise. Do you think he'll actually follow through on this?
Two important questions. With President Trump, everyone's always surprised. Even when we read in advance what he's supposed to say, we're still surprised. So, 500% tariffs in the Senate bill, his 100% tariffs, because he said, once you get above 100%, does it really matter? So he's being practical. Will it happen? Well, if you count the 50 days, it looks like it's right around September the 2nd, which would be for me an early birthday present. But it also comes right around our Labor Day holiday. So, and then gearing up about 2 weeks into the UN General Assembly, which would give President Trump an ability to tout during his speech that, hey, I finally resolved this temporarily with a ceasefire, but we'll see.
John, saying that it's, and you said 100%, 500%, whatever the tariff manages to be, is any of that really going to make a difference to Russia? Is that really going to make a difference and bring Putin to the table for negotiations? Or is it just kind of symbolic?
It potentially is real. India is a huge purchaser of oil because it's able to buy it at a discount, and it's got 1 billion plus people. So for India, it's useful, and they do refine some and send it on. And China's another big purchaser of Russian oil. Is either India or China, do they have the elasticity, the economic, political, commercial, financial elasticity to absorb those tariffs? Potentially you could see Russia discounting the oil to the point where the tariff doesn't matter. But 100% secondary tariffs get attention, and primarily they get attention because that means that banks start looking to their compliance officers. The compliance officers start reading the U.S. regulations, and then people start to get nervous because then you start to worry about fines. So yes, they potentially can be a deterrent, but as we've seen with President Trump, he generally doesn't like to drop the hammer, so to speak. He likes to threat, and keep threatening and keep delaying, hoping he can get a deal. So, if we look at his history, it's likely they're not going to actually implement anything.
Well, something that is being implemented, and we know that is definitely going to happen, is that NATO and the deal that's been struck there indicates that they will be paying for these weapon defense systems. Was that inevitable? Do you think that was going to happen regardless?
Yes, there was no question that President Trump was not going to use U.S. taxpayer money when he now sees a great big pot of money within the European Union members, the 27 members of the EU, and the 32 members of NATO. EU has they've just about agreed to this $150 billion pot of defense authorizations, money that can be spent, and Canada's trying to get involved, Turkey is trying to get involved, so they can all get a piece of this. Well, now that money's sitting there, and so for President Trump, he knows that most of the NATO members continue to get their military hardware from the U.S., so for him, it's sort of it's free money lying there. But the challenge is going to be, and we saw this at the NATO meeting a week ago with the president, Prime Minister Sanchez of Spain, where he said, okay, two things. First, I've got Patriots, but I really don't want to give it away because President Zelensky has spent 4 years telling us that we should be scared of Russia, even though Spain is quite a way away from Russia. And then number two, if I adhere to this 5%, 3.5% of defense and 1.5% infrastructure, if I move our resources, I'm going to get thrown out of office because our voters won't like it. So there's a lot that's continuing to unravel here. But for President Trump, it's a good day. He's a salesman and he's selling what he wants to sell, but Ukraine isn't going to get all this stuff right away because these Patriot batteries, they take about a year to make. You're talking about 600 a year or so. So, this is going to be somewhat of a slow process. I would just add finally that What was interesting in what President Trump said today, he alluded to the fact that President Putin was an assassin, which was sort of interesting play on words. And the other is that he said I wrote this down. He fooled many people. He fooled Bush, he fooled Obama, and he fooled Biden. He didn't say the word lie. And he didn't say Putin lied to him. And so that's really interesting. He continues to avoid saying that Putin lied to him and Putin said no to him. So it's always very, very interesting to watch the linguistics that President Trump uses.
John, before we let you go, the US envoy as well, Keith Kellogg, is in Kiev for defense talks with senior Ukrainian officials. Probably no coincidence at such a time when Trump makes this announcement, but that is his first visit since there's been any previous announcement on military aid. So what does his presence there actually tell us about the direction that the administration is taking on Ukraine?
Well, General Kellogg, he's a retired, lieutenant general, and the perception was, hey, there's this 80-year-old guy, and who's going to pay attention to him? But he's sort of like Yoda, in the Star Wars, that President Trump, he likes people that have experience, and so he's not flashy, but he's common sense. The Ukrainians also initially sort of pushed him aside, saying, what's this guy? He's not J.D. Vance, he's not Rubio, he's not President Trump. So we're just going to we're going to mock him. We're not really going to deal with him. And eventually they got the message. And so it's good he's there. His daughter is also very heavily involved in Ukraine. And so that gives him a connectivity that others don't have. But the timing, wasn't a coincidence. He was planned to go as a part of this sort of rollout. And, hopefully the Ukrainians will embrace this visit. They're not going to get everything they want. They never get everything they want because they want everything. But this is a good day for them, and hopefully they'll embrace it.
John Kavulich, thank you so much for joining us live from London. We appreciate it. Thank you.